Silphium is a plant that used to be all along the Mediterranean, which is now believed to be extinct or forgotten. Pliny, the writer of natural history, cites Theophrastus, who was the successor of Aristotle and studied botany, that Silphium was first discovered after a black rain showered down on the gardens of Hesperides and Syrtis, which is Cyrenaica, Libya today, in the year 136 of the Roman calendar, or 617 BC. Theophrastus noted that it grew profusely in a region known as Silphifera, which was near the Gulf of Syrtis. It mainly grew in the plateaus along the Mediterranean coast, as it received considerably more rainfall compared to the deserts to the south. It grew wild in the regions of hilly and forested meadows near the coast. Silphium supposedly had numerous thick roots, which were fennel-like, a solid non-hollow stalk, and leaves like parsley. Stylized images of it were imprinted on the coins of Cyrenaica. All of this points to it belonging in the Umbelliferae family. Umbelliferae is family mostly of aromatic flowering plants, named after the type genus Apium, and commonly known as the celery, carrot, or parsley family, or simply as Umbelliferous. The taste of silphium is hard to understand and difficult to recreate, but it is said that it was similar to garlic, but without the strong odor after eating it. In ancient times, silphium was used to feed sheep and cattle, giving their meat a unique and popular flavor. The stalk of the plant was cooked in a variety of ways and was also used medicinally as a purgative. There aren't many recipes left that use silphium, but here's one from the Dairy Concaneria. It's a recipe for water and honey melons that calls for half a honey melon and half a watermelon, along with 500 milliliters of passum, which is a very sweet wine sauce made by boiling new wine or grape juice to thicken it. A little bit of honey, 1 tablespoon of minced parsley, half a teaspoon of fresh ground pepper, and a little bit of liquamen, which was a salty fish sauce, a dash of salt, palamanese, which was a mint that grew in the local area, silphium or vinegar. Then it calls to dice the melons in a pan together with spices and herbs and cook it until it's done. Almost every part of the plant was used: the resin from the stalk, the dried and ground root, and the leaves for seasoning. The most valuable part of it was actually the resin made from the juice of the silphium plant. Incisions were made in the plant's root or stem, and drops of the juice were collected and dried to produce the resin, which was called laser. Medically, laser was used against fevers, coughs, warts, general aches and pains, and to restore hair, and is also known as a contraceptive. George Frederick Marsh was one of the first American natural historians to comment on the species' extinction. He states that silphium seems to have disappeared entirely, and describes the damaging effects of human activity on a variety of other Mediterranean plants. In the play Rudens, written by Plautus around 200 BC, refers to large silphium plantations near Cyrene, the capital of Cyrenaica. The export of silphium became one of the mainstays of the Cyrenian economy, as evidenced by the fact that its coins bore the plant's image. There were many factors to the downfall of silphium. The first was the obvious over-harvesting that occurred to it because of its popularity, and many uses it had. The second was that it was difficult to farm, and when it was, it didn't have that same great taste of the ones that grew in the wild. The third was the thuon trees that grew with it in the forest, which helped nourish and feed the plant, but in the end they were all cut down and deforested because of its desirable wood. This led to the soil erosion and the degradation of the silphium's habitat. After an unsuccessful revolt against the Roman hegemony, the lands owned by the Temple of Apollo in Cyrene were taken over by the Roman state and given to the wealthy and influential landlords. The tenant farmers who had long lived on those properties depended on silphium as a source of income, but the absentee landlords who preferred short-term profit to the more substantial practices of the tenant farmers did not manage the land as well. Instead of allowing the soil a year to rejuvenate itself, they planted summer crops such as cumin, saffron, or chickpeas between the crops of wheat and barley. As silphium became rarer, it became more valuable. The Roman government ultimately declared a monopoly on its production. The Roman landlords even fenced off the meadows in which silphium grew to keep local flocks from decimating them. but the natives practiced a kind of agrarian terrorism by tearing down the fences and letting their flocks graze on the Silphium to increase the value of the sheep's mutton. It even reported that some of the locals would steal at night into the landlord's Silphium fields and merely uproot these plants. The decline in Silphium's abundance was noted all the way back since 49 BC. Even Julius Caesar mentioned the storage of 1,500 pounds of lazar in the Roman treasury, and by the first half of the 1st century, it had not been seen for many years in its native habitat. It's also believed that the last known stock, being valued in its weight in gold, had been sent to the Emperor Nero between 54 and 68 AD.